Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Livre Canada Books webinar on the Philippines book market. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Today's presentation will be given in English and should take about 60 minutes, including time set aside for questions at the end. La présentation d'aujourd'hui sera en anglais et devrait durer environ 60 minutes, et nous avons prévu du temps par la fin pour répondre à vos questions. Pour accéder à l'interprétation vers le français, cliquez sur l'icône Interprétation au bas de votre écran dans les commandes pour la réunion. Par la suite, sélectionnez la langue de votre choix. For those who do not require interpretation, please leave the interpretation feature off. After the presentation is complete, we'll be taking questions in both languages via the Q&A function, which should be visible on your screen. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and we will collect them for the Q&A session at the end. Nous vous invitons à poser vos questions via la fonction questions-réponses. N'hésitez pas à soumettre vos questions tout au long du webinaire. Nous les recueillerons par la séance de questions qui aura lieu à la fin. If you encounter any problems or have any questions relating to the platform, please message me as the host via the chat function. Si vous rencontrez des problèmes ou si vous avez des questions au sujet de la plateforme, veuillez m'envoyer un message privé en tant que host. We are very pleased to be hosting today's webinar, providing key insights on the publishing market of the Philippines, an archipelago with over 100 million inhabitants, and this year's Frankfurt Guest of Honour country. The Philippines comprises a multitude of islands, languages, and influences. Known for its diversity and dynamism, the literature of the Philippines reflects its rich cultural heritage, including Indigenous oral storytelling traditions and unique global perspectives. I am delighted to introduce today's speaker, Andrea Pasión Flores, the owner of and publisher of Mil Flores Publishing in the Philippines, and she also holds posts with both the Book Development Association of the Philippines and the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society. Welcome, Andrea, and thank you for joining us today. I'll turn over the mic to you for now so that we can get started.
Okay, thank you for having me. Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure for me and both a privilege to be speaking to you about the Philippine book market. So I'm just going to jump right in. So I've divided today's presentation as follows. First, I'll be telling you general facts about the Philippines, and then I will be giving you some comparative data about the Philippines and the Southeast Asian market, and including the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And then we'll go to the Philippine market up close. I will tell you about book publishing within the Philippine creative industries, the sales and industry value, or the estimated sales and industry value of the book publishing market. I will also be telling you about ISBN applications and ISBN category breakdowns. I will also tell you about the projected book market value until 2028, readership highlights or Filipino book reading habits, and some translation statistics and incentives from the Philippines in case you are interested in translating Philippine content. You will notice that some of the numbers that I will be telling you might differ, and they are dependent on the sources. I will be telling you data from the National Library of the Philippines, the National Book Development Board, the Philippine Statistical Authority, as well as country reports and online statistics. So here we go. Basic, where is the Philippines? The Philippines is in Southeast Asia. So on the left, you have a close-up of Southeast Asia and the 10 Asian countries that form the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And in the global map, we're in the Far East. So we are under Japan and Korea, just over Australia. Okay, and to the right of us is the Pacific Ocean. Before we get to North America. Okay, So some quick country stats. If you look at the map, the Philippines is divided into 3 island groups. The largest island is Luzon, which is that upper island on the top, and the group of islands in the middle, which is called the Visayas, and then the bottom land mass is Mindanao. So the Philippines is an archipelago of 7,641 islands, where a population of about 114 to 115 million. It has a land area of 300,000 square kilometers. The average age of the population is around 25. It is a working age population. People between the ages 15 to 64 comprise 64% of the population and 67% by 2055. So the Philippines is considered a lower middle income country. And the expected growth rate of the GDP for 2025 is 5.3%, lower than the projected 5.5 to 6.5%, given recent world events. So the my next following slides will tell you a little bit about the Philippine market vis-a-vis the ASEAN market. So I will be mainly benchmarking with 6 other ASEAN countries. If I were a Canadian publisher or an international publisher, looking at this part of the world, I feel it would be good to look at the market in terms of the ASEAN region, which is a very culturally diverse market. But the ASEAN Book Publishers Association it meets regularly with several book publishing organizations of each of those markets, wanting to integrate more. So it might also be interesting to look at the Philippines vis-a-vis the larger ASEAN market, because the Southeast Asian market is a large market comprised of around 670 million people. Okay, so which are the ASEAN countries? You have Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. So this is the Association of Southeast Asian nations. But for your book markets, I feel these are your main Southeast Asian market. Malaysia, according to their country report, the most recent is that their book market is worth 1.37 billion US dollars, followed by Thailand at 463 million US, and the Philippines at 220 million, Singapore at 151.57 million, Indonesia at around 134 million, and Vietnam at around 111 million. So I feel these 6 countries are your biggest markets in Southeast Asia. Incidentally, Malaysia is hosting the IPA Congress next year in Kuala Lumpur. So internationally, the most recent statistics from the IPA is circa 2014. So you can imagine that this is really outdated. So we've had to pull from various sources. And some of the country reports from these countries are not available except for Malaysia and the Philippines. Singapore does not make its country report available, and Thailand, I have it from the Publishers and Booksellers Association of that. Okay. Okay. So these estimates by the IPA, they kind of feel small, and quite an underestimation of the ASEAN market. But you might wanna, this is interesting in terms of the ranking, perhaps, if you wanna look at that these were the countries identified by the IPA as significant countries from the ASEAN. Okay, there's another way of looking at these countries. One of them is in terms of population. So Indonesia has the biggest population in Southeast Asia at almost 300 million or 285 million people. The Philippines will come next, depending on what you're looking at, between 114 to 116 million. Vietnam at around 101 million or 100 million. Thailand would be next at around 71 million. Malaysia between 35 to 36 million. And then Singapore between 5 to 6 million. You can also look at this group of countries in terms of the number of titles that they come out each year. So the first one would be Indonesia at 107,000 titles as of 2023. That's a huge amount of titles. A lot of that would be in translation into Bahasa Indonesia. The next would be Vietnam. A lot of those also would be in translation. So Vietnam came out at for 2018 statistics at 33,000 or 34,000 titles. The next would be Singapore at 26,000 titles. As of 2022 stats, and that's significant. It's a lot considering that it is a small population. Next would be Malaysia at 22,753 titles. Next would be Thailand at 18,225 titles. And next would be the Philippines at 13,000 titles. Okay. And I already told you the ranking of values. So you will have Malaysia at 1.37 billion, Thailand 463 million, the Philippines 220 million, Singapore 151.5 million, Indonesia 133 million, and Vietnam at 110 million. Okay, so let's go to the Philippine market up close. Okay. The Philippine creative industry is valued at 1.72 trillion Philippine pesos, or about 30.1 billion. It contributes around 6.9 or around 7% of the to the GDP as of 2023 records of the Philippine Statistical Authority. And yeah, so that's about 30.1 billion. Yeah, so we're hoping that the Philippines has recovered from the pandemic in terms of its creative industries, even if it has dipped a bit from the previous year in terms of contribution to the GDP. If you subdivide the contribution, you will have the biggest contribution coming from traditional or cultural expression. That might be woven cloth, traditional clothes, souvenirs, and things that are created through traditional cultural expression. And I direct your attention to the blue stripe of the bars, and that would be media, publishing, and printing services or activities where books have been lumped into the traditional format of print in this in the creative sector. So they have measured that the media publishing and printing activities wherein books are also a part of contribute 4.2%, or around 1.26 billion of the whole 7% of the creative industries, or which total 1.72 trillion. Okay. So who are these people who are part of the book publishing industry? The National Book Development Board requires registration for stakeholders. Certainly, if you're an author or a translator, you need not register with any government body to be called a stakeholder, but National Book Development Board of the Philippines requests that you register if you would like to receive grants or incentives from their office. Okay, and that's why you would notice that they do register not only publishers, but individuals like authors, editors, illustrators, designers, um, for them to receive incentives from that particular government agency. Okay. So this is their 2024 data. And you will see here just the number of publishers that I've pulled out. And you will see a general increase in the number of publishers. Specifically, there's a huge jump from 2020 during the pandemic to 2021, wherein there were a large number of publishers who suddenly registered. We have also recently seen a lot of indie publishers or self-publishers, authors who consider themselves publishers by virtue of doing their own books, rise in the number of publishers registered with the National Book Development Board. So we see a trend of increase, slowly. There's been a dip and then sort of a plateau. Hopefully, the numbers increase by the end of the year, because as of mid-year, I think there's only a 1.4% increase in the number of publishers. Okay. According to the National Book Development Board, counting the financial statements submitted to them, which is fairly accurate, I would think. The total sales of the industry equals 13,716,845,297. That's broken down between textbooks, which comprise 70% of the sales, and trade books, which comprise 30%. So in US dollars, that's 241 million total sales for 2024. Textbook sales at our 168.5 million US, and trade at 72.25 million. This is interesting because the 72 million estimate for trade is reflected in the numbers of the official statistical office of the Philippines, which is the Philippine Statistical Authority, which pegs the sales for publishing and print media at 4.2% contribution to the GDP, pegs it at 72.2 million, which is so close to the declared trade sales of publishers at 72.25 million. But what I've noticed is the sale of textbooks is not reflected in the official PSA numbers. Maybe this is due to what metrics might have been used. I don't know if they're only using income garnered from non-government revenue, but it is interesting that it's actually plus that and double, so it's like 3 times more. Um, the declared that the textbook sales was not reflected in those particular numbers. Okay. Okay. Looking at the data from the National Book Development Board, the registration the registration applications or the registration data, which has the financial statements of all the publishers registered with it, which means they are probably covering most or if not all of your legitimate publishers, as they are very strict with their registration procedure. So it is, I feel, pretty trustworthy. So these are the numbers of sales of NBDB registered publishers, and you can see that there is a growth, except for 2019 and 2020. 2020, quite understandably, because of the pandemic. And then you have a jump because of the large negative year of 2020. And then slowly there's that increase from the previous year to 247 and then 241 in 2023. Let me just check this. Okay. But if you check 2018, the industry has yet to reach the 2018 levels, which it hasn't done yet, despite the number of increase in titles, for example. Okay. So there's also a discrepancy of data from the National Library, which registered an increase here. They said that the earnings for 2020 of the industry was at 220, but that should have been pegged at 2019. But in any case, that's the official data from the National Book Development Board. Okay. This slide tells us a little bit about the import and export values of books in the Philippines. As you can see, just by looking at the import column at the end, that the Philippines is more of an importer of books than an exporter of books, with most of your numbers pushing over the 90s and culminating in 2024 at 95.74% imports versus 4.26% exports. And in trade values, you will see that imports outpace exports at 42 million imports, US dollars, vis-a-vis less than $2 million in exports. In terms of number of books, that's a whopping 24 to 1. 24 for every 24 books, that's one book exported. For every 24 books imported, one book is exported. So the reason for this is still undetermined. There is a gnawing suspicion that you can import anything and it easily comes into the Philippines, but exporting out of the Philippines is much harder, much more difficult. Some companies have been known to, for example, put up plants in other countries rather than export from the Philippines. So I think people are looking into why that is. So the supply chain there might be something to look at in there. Okay. So in terms of the value of earnings of NBDB registered publishers in terms of US dollars, there is a steady increase, not counting, for example, 2020 and 2021, which is your aberrant years. But like I said, the value has not yet reached 2018 levels, but it's steadily growing, which the publishers see as a good sign. So it's right now valued at around 240 million US dollars, thereabouts. Okay. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the ISBN applications per year, and we can break this down. The ISBNs are given by the National Library of the Philippines. So through the years, I think through 8 or 9 years, there's been a steady growth of the production of titles in the Philippines. And a particularly high increase in 2021 when we had the longest lockdown in the world between 2020 and 2021 because of COVID, and that resulted in an increase of almost 50% in the production of titles. And the Philippines has steadily maintained that number, and in 2024 increased that by over 25 or over 26% to produce over 13,000 titles. If you look at that in this graph form, so the increase to 9,497 in 2021 is due to the pandemic year, and the suspicion that the increase in 2024 is in anticipation of being guest of honor in Frankfurt. So people produced more titles or were excited to produce more books to exhibit in Frankfurt this year. Okay, if we break down the application of ISBNs by category, you will see that there is a significant growth in title production across all measured categories, from children's books, textbooks, and educational materials, as well as trade books, with the number of textbooks showing the most significant increase at 43.1%, from 4,788 new titles in 2023 to 6,853 titles in 2024, or an increase of over 2,000 titles. The children's book category also increased by 43.5%, from 1,215 to 1,743 in 2024. There's also a slight growth in trade books. That's a 3% growth of 125 titles from 2023, from 4,297 to 4,400 2022. The increase in children's books and textbooks is attributed to the Department of Education procuring, aside from textbooks, supplementary learning resources, is what they call all other books that are not textbooks, and they have been procuring that for a reason that I will tell you soon. Okay, so if we break down the ISBN registration by regions in the Philippines, you will see that the National Capital Region, which is Metro Manila is bigger than the city of Manila, which is the capital. So Metro Manila is around 14 cities and one municipality. That's around a population of around 12 to 15 million. So you have the concentration of the largest number of publishers in the National Capital Region, which reflects also the large number, the large percentage of ISBN applications coming from Manila. Then you have Region 4, and then you have Region 7. So you'll note that the NCR and Region 4 area would be in Luzon, which is your largest island in the north part of the Philippines, and Region 7, 1,200. That's the Visayas, your group of islands. And then the rest are not even breaking 1,000. And these are the other numbers from the other regions, all totaling your total number of over 13,000. Okay. And if you graph that, you'll see the disparity of the number of ISBN regions, really the bulk of it carried by the National Capital Region. It's also the center of your economy and finance, although the glut in real estate in Metro Manila is forcing developers to go to the regions and the other centers of the other island groups. And so you also slowly see cities developing and hopefully also more publishers setting up, or more publishers from the region mushrooming from the many cities and many regions of the Philippines, not just from Metro Manila. Okay, so as to formats, you will see that your biggest application for ISBN is coming from soft bound or paperback titles at 6,909 ISBN applications in 2024. Then your hardcover is 1,325. You have EPUB only at 1,149 and Mobi and Kindle at 386. There's the PDF read-onlys and PDF downloadables, which shows you, aside from your EPUB formats at 1,149, the proliferation also of ebook-only formats. Although still predominantly we are a print format market. Audiobook seems negligible to almost non-existent if you notice only 36 ISBN applications or ISBNs given to audiobooks arise from only five ISBN applications in the previous year. So we are definitely not an audiobook market yet, despite our very heavy traffic. Okay, in what languages are books published in the Philippines? Primarily in English. Okay, the Philippines, the official languages of the Philippines are Filipino and English. English is the language that most publishers in the Philippines publish in, outnumbering the publication of books in Filipino by 7,067, or by 76%. There is a growth, however, in both English and Filipino titles. And there are almost negligible number of titles published in the other regional languages. Given that, depending on what source you're looking at, the Philippines has officially 131, but some say between 175 to 180 languages all over the country. 19 of those languages are considered mother tongue languages, which means over a million. You have over a million people speaking that language, and these are the only languages, primarily English and Filipino, which publishers publish in. So these are the viable the languages that have viable markets in the Philippines. It's also significant to note that many Filipinos or Filipinos who buy books can read in both English and Filipino, which means if I were a publisher, let's say, taking Filipino language rights, I would have to also take the English language rights because I would see it as a competitor language. So that if, because many of, let's say, the American books are available in the Philippines, you will have very few publishers interested in publishing those books in Filipino or any of the local languages because the market can read in English. Okay, so that's how the graph looks like, and very starkly shows you the number of books published in English. Okay, so I just want to tell you a little bit about the top publishers who have applied for ISBNs. So if you look at, I mean, I can tell you a little bit of what talks to me about when I see this information. Like, for example, if I see that the top publisher who has the most ISBN application is a publisher called 8 Letters. This is a publisher on demand, a publish on demand publisher, which primarily gives author services. And they have the highest number of ISBN applications. And this is the same for the next publisher, Poetry Planet Book Publishing. That is also a publish on demand company. 8 Letters has a small print run of between 50 to 200 copies. The Institute of Labor Studies is a new one. So I feel that's a government or private institution. It's an institution which publishes their own studies. So that is probably a very niche publisher. Then you have SIB, CNE, Central Book Supply, Rex Bookstore, VBAL, and I keep going down. I will ignore Shirley Parapia and go down to Phoenix Beyond Books. Those are all textbook publishers. Okay, and then Lampara, which is a children's book publisher. And also supplementary learning resource, particularly geared towards educational publishing. So your next biggest applicants for ISBN would be textbook publishers. And if you look at Central Book Supply, they are owned by I'm looking at SIBS, Central Book Supply, and the next page, Phoenix Publishing, that's owned by one family. And Central Book Supply is also a POD, aside from being their imprint for their law book imprint. Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to tell you about the recent we feel phenomenon of the Department of Education procuring books from publishers, which is good news, I think, for many publishers. And this is in response to the very low PISA scores of the Philippines. So in 2022, the Program for International Student Assessment, in the 2022 test of the Program for International Student Assessment, the Philippine performance in reading, mathematics, and science was among the lowest, with scores similar to their 2018 results, which was the first time the Philippines participated. So specifically, the Philippines ranked 76th in mathematics, 77th in reading, and 79th in science out of 81 participating countries. So it didn't help that the PISA year that the Philippines participated the second time came after the pandemic, and Filipino students had one of the longest lockdowns in the world of almost a year. So students barely learned anything with the policy of self-study through self-learning modules. And so the Philippine scores were lower than the OECD average member state scores for reading, math, and science. So these scores prompted the Department of Education to do a bit of an overhaul in terms of the curriculum, the procurement of textbooks from the private sector, because they were adamant at producing their own or procuring lowest bidder, not necessarily best quality textbook, for example, from the procurement process. And the welcome news is they are now stocking more and more books, not just textbooks. It includes children's books, novels, literature, everything. They are beginning to stock the public school system with books from book publishers. So they started last year, I think 2024, with a modest budget, and now they're growing this budget. And I have their planned procurement until 2028, but it is expected that they will keep going beyond 2028. This is just the projection for this administration, because the president's term is a 6-year term. And so I think this is the projection for this particular administration. Okay, so this is the spending plan of the Department of Education for the coming 3 years, not counting 2025, but the 2025 spending plan is already there for you, which they are currently implementing. So aside from a textbook budget, you will see there a budget allotted for SLRs, or supplementary learning resources. So that is the second row. If you will see from 2025, GAA means Government Appropriations Act, which is the budget that is legislated every year. So you have constantly a growth there of the procurement of SLRs, which are non-textbooks, from picture books to novels, nonfiction, everything that is ideally related to the curriculum but need not be related to the curriculum, as they have been procuring all sorts of things that they feel are good for basic education students to learn, that's from K to 12. So for 2025, there was a budget of 44.58 million for SLRs. I'm looking only at the second row. And then 2026, the proposal is for around 47 million. For 2027, around 50 million, and then for 2028, around 52.8 million. So it's a steady growth for not necessarily textbooks, so that public school students have access to all sorts of books that they need to for learning, and to also improve their PISA scores before the next exam. And for for their for their reading pleasure also, I hope. Okay, so all this means that this will directly reflect in an which means this will directly increase industry sales by around 170 million US dollars for 2025 alone. Okay, adding to the conservative previous industry value at around 220 million, which means for this year alone, the industry will be worth around 390 million in 2025, 388.25 million in 2026, declining to about 292.7 million in 2027 and 272 million in 2028. So those numbers include already the textbook procurement budget, and you will see that in some years, in 2027 and 2028, they will not be procuring from grades 1 to 10. TX means textbooks, TMs mean teachers manuals. And so the small decline in the succeeding years reflect the non-procurement of those textbooks, but a continuous procurement of non-textbook titles. Okay, so and that is the projected growth that I was telling you about. So we expect growth up to 2028, and knowing that this will probably keep on going even beyond this administration, so that hopefully the industry also grows with new titles, new license procurements for the titles that the Department of Education might be needing until the foreseeable future of 2028 and hopefully beyond that. Okay, so afterwards, I want to tell you a little bit about the reading habits of Filipinos. This is from a readership survey done by the National Book Development Board. Okay, so I have to disclose that from 2007 to 2020, 2012, I was the executive director of the National Book Development Board. I was the chair. When I was there, the chair that I knew was the one who commissioned the 2003 readership survey. So I know very well from 2003 to 2012. 2017, if you look at that bar, it looks like an aberration because that was a different statistical company that did the survey, but this particular NBDB, I'm no longer there, the new executive director, and the new executive director is Charisse Tugade. I hope you guys meet her in Frankfurt. She's a fantastic woman. And so she continued the same survey that was used from 2003, 2007, and 2012 up to 2023. And so the 2017 numbers, I feel, sort of used a different methodology. So I like to look at the 2003 to 2023, where you will see very clearly a downward trend in the reading habits of non-school books of Filipinos. And if you compare that with the methodology of 2017, it looks like a large drop, but what I see is a consistent drop from 2003, 2007, 2012, and 2023. So what this looks like is 42% of adult Filipinos read non-school books. Okay. So here in 2012, 54% of adults read non-school books. What's nice about the 2017 and 2023, they actually measured children, which in the previous years, it only concentrated on adults because the previous years, they were only riders. The reading survey was a rider to an election survey, whereas 2017 and 2023 are full readership surveys. Okay, so you will see that for 2023, I feel because these are two different surveys, at least for the children, measuring the reading habits of Filipino children. You can't see a trend yet, but for adults, you do see a declining trend in reading. Okay. So what do Filipino children and adults read? So number one is the Bible. Across the board, for children and adults, they say that they read the Bible. So that's 64%, let's say in 2023, of the 42% of those adults who said they read books, read the Bible. Okay, and for children, they read picture books at 49%. And after the Bible, you have health, wellness, medicine, family planning, child rearing, parenting, herbal medicine, short stories for children, romances or love, food, cookbooks, culinary arts are next, and graphic novels. If you look at 2003, 2007, 2012, and 2023, you sort of have a growth in the reading of comic books, starting from 0 in 2003, and it jumped to 26% of those adults reading books. More than a quarter read comic books, right? A small decline in 2012, back up in 2023. Okay, I can't compare that really the 2017, but you do have there a high number. It's a valid survey. It's just that it's hard to compare it with the other studies which use a similar methodology, but still a large number say they read comic books. And then the other genres, literature, short story, and novel for young adults. So the Philippines, looking at its age demographic, is a very large young adult market. A large number of the market, they love also crime, suspense, thriller, horrors, and vampires. Self-help and inspirational books are very high on the list as well. And poetry. I'm thinking poetry scores high because it's also a young market. Crime and detective, crime also high because uh, it scores. And then folklit, myths and legends, riddles and proverbs, still very high within the Philippines and growing, it seems. Okay, so how are people accessing these books? What's nice is a large number of people still buy books. They procure licensed copies, whether they purchase it or through subscription, maybe through LMS, the learning management systems in their schools, wherein The ebooks might be bundled, or perhaps the print book might be bundled, or if it's a subscription, or if it's free. You have the blue section shows you how they are getting these books, and free is great as long as it's a license. And then you have a small number, the reds were in. Those are unlicensed and unpaid, so they might be pirated, and then the free subscription. Of course, if you look at the top, you will see the Bible as number one. If you look at the bottom, you will see the Quran also. So the Quran, I think, is given out for free. So you have a large number of that access freely rather than purchased. You also have some groups in the Philippines who give Bibles for free. The Philippines is more than 80% Catholic, and then perhaps around 10% Muslim, and then the rest might be other denominations. Okay. Okay. This is among genres, the different readership of non-school books. In the past 12 months, how many of them read what? So here in 2023, you will see that 64% of the 42% who read books say that in the last 12 months, they read the Bible. And then that is for the other genres like a short story for children, romances, or romance books score high. Wattpad used to be Wattpad in its many iterations that deliver romances are very popular in the Philippines, especially in the local language, and especially if they're written by celebrities. So they score very high. Yeah. And so I just wanted to show you that the biggest would still be the Bible, followed by picture books, for children, but large number of storybooks for children also read by adults apparently. And short stories for children, romances, and yeah. Okay. Okay. How are these books accessed? Preferred access to non-school ebooks and audiobooks of Filipino adults. So this is only for adults and only for digital and audiobooks. So at least they purchased the copies, and number one still would be the Bible. If those were audio or ebooks that were done, there's very little audiobooks, I feel, but if they were done during the previous years and were and is readily available, people still purchase these books. Okay. Okay. By format, what do Filipinos prefer? Across the board, from children to adults, it's primarily a print market. So let's say the Philippines, children in the Philippines, 65% of those who read prefer print. And then if you look at the adults, same, they prefer print. And then by age, 70% of 8 to 11-year-olds prefer print, 12 to 15, 62%, 16 to 17, 60%. But if you go to adults, when they grow up, 58%, still a majority prefer print. And then as they grow older, if you look at from ages 45, 55, and 65 and above, you have more and more preferring print books. As to education, so if they finish up to some elementary, the preference is for print. Up to some junior high, 61% prefer print. Up to some vocational education, still a majority, or 56% prefer print. Up to some college, 60% prefer print. For adults, the preference is also for print, even as to educational attainment. But as you will see, even with kids, the more education they have, they also perhaps also prefer digital because just a slight majority when they are more educated, if they have some college or postgraduate degrees, less of them might prefer print.
Andrea, so sorry to interrupt.
Okay,
Yeah, we're just around time, so we can keep going for
okay,
another 5 minutes or so if you want to wrap up. I just
okay.
wanted to remind everyone that this is being recorded and it'll be made available on the Literature Canada Books YouTube channel and website. So if anyone has to leave for other appointments, please feel free to email me after the session so that I can forward the recording to you once it's made available. And any questions you might have of the session as well, feel free to forward it to me by email. I'll leave my email in the chat, but I'll let Andrea wrap up her presentation.
Okay, so I just want to skip to how much the book should cost if you want more people to buy. A dollar is around 55, 57 pesos. So you have a little beneath $2 for more people to buy. But your higher income people won't mind buying your more expensive book. Where can you find the print books? So aside from brick and mortar, many people acquire their books from online shopping platforms like Shopee and Lazada and the websites of the publishers. The Philippine content has been translated. A lot of them are fiction and nonfiction, and lots of children's literature. These are the languages wherein Philippine content has been translated. There's certainly more room for Canadian French translation if you're interested, because the Philippines has a fantastic translation subsidy program if you would like to scan the QR code for more details. And I think this is how much the translation grant is for. And the last cycle for this year is November 30. That's the deadline for application in case you'd like to meet some publishers in Frankfurt to check out some of the Philippine titles. And that's it for me. Should I stop sharing?
Yes, feel free to stop sharing or you can leave it on the thank you page. It's up to you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And I didn't see any questions that were submitted throughout the presentation on the Q&A. But like I said, if anyone that attended this session would like to ask any questions, feel free to email me directly and I'll redirect the questions to Andrea afterwards. We also have the PowerPoint slides available in English and French if anyone would like to review any of the information that was shared here afterwards. So thank you everyone and thank you very much, Andrea. Sorry to rush you at the end, but
No,
this was
it's
a
fine. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
yes,
I can
very
go on and
comprehensive
on. Thanks for
presentation.
stopping.
Thank you so much. Let me just do a little wrap up and then I'll let everyone go to their lunch or to sleep in Andrea's case. But yes, as we now come to the end of our session, I'd just like to thank Andrea again for providing us an excellent overview of the opportunities and challenges of the Philippines book market. I also extend our thanks to the interpreters who have provided an invaluable service for us today. And last but not least, I'd also like to thank all of you for being here with us, as well as the Ken Export and the Canada Book Fund for the financial support for this event. So have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next time.